This is Undiscovered podcast, and we've got stuff. Now, we'll be doing this podcast in two different formats. Once in a while, we'll be doing this sit-down format where we go into a deep dive, because, girl, at my core, a girl is a journalist, all right? So we'll do a deep dive into a story that everyone is talking about right now, or maybe even a story you've not thought about for a long time. But before we do that today, because today is a story that everyone is talking about, I need to thank someone who has decided to sponsor this podcast. And so early on, damn, thank you. Special shout out to Kane's Kitchen, who have decided that they will be providing us with these chocolate bombs throughout this season of Undiscovered. So let me just show them to you because she's even branded them, guys. These are called chocolate bombs. So how you consume them, if you want, and if you possess the greed that we read about in the Bible, you can put the whole thing in your mouth. However, she recommends that you place the chocolate bomb in a mug of water and pour, not a mug of water, a mug, period. And you pour 1 cup of warm milk over the bomb. And that will get you a beautiful, fragrant mug to enjoy over these cold evenings this cold season. All right? So again, thank you so much to Kane's Kitchen for sponsoring Undiscovered podcast. All right? Now, let's get back into the story. So this week we will be talking about the recently concluded case of the murder of Sharon Otieno. If you hear a voice that is not mine on this podcast, I want you to know that is my producer, MPA, and just all around glorious human being, Julia Awar. I call her Jules. She will be reacting to this podcast as well. I promise you, I have not told her anything. She has not seen the script that I spent a long time working on. So the same way you're reacting is the same way she will be reacting. You won't see her, but for sure, you're going to hear her. All right? Say hi, Julia.
Hi, everyone.
All right. So that is the voice of Julia. Now, let's get right into the story. Now, on September the 4th, 2018, a farmer named Moses Ongili was grazing cattle near Owade River close to Kodera Forest in Homa Bay County. So then he found a woman's body that was in a thicket, and he would later tell reporters that it was ghastly. Of course, it's ghastly when you happen upon a body of a human being when you're out and about just herding your cattle, right? So you can imagine, Jules, how shocking, how jarring that must have been for him.
Yeah.
So, as everyone has said, that it was even said in court that crime scene was really ghastly. And he has told this to reporters many times. So, the body that he found on that day on September 4th, 2018 was that of Sharon Otieno. She was 26 years old. And she had been stabbed between 7 and 8 times. You know, the reports vary. And she was stabbed in the neck, in the back, and in the abdomen. By the way, you see me looking down here as well, my notes and my script are. And she was also 28 weeks pregnant. So her unborn son died from a stab wound to the mother's abdomen. This actually tells you that her murderers are not just out to kill her. For someone to actually go through her abdomen and harm her unborn child, this was something that was done on purpose, right? I hope you get that. So it took almost 8 years, but on July 23rd of this year, 2016, Justice Cecilia Githua stood in Milimani Law Courts and read a verdict that closed one of the most closely watched cases and murder trials in Kenyan history. So former Migori Governor Okoth Obado, his former PA, Michael Oyamo, and former County Clerk Kaspal Obiero were all found guilty of murdering Sharon Otieno. So now this judgment took a long time. It was a long time coming. And it also came after 42 prosecution witnesses, 81 exhibits, girl, and a trial that formally ran from July 2021 to early 2026, sitting on top of nearly 3 years of pre-trial delay before that. 3 years before even the trial started. I want you to remember that Sharon was found when? In 2018.
Yeah.
So the trial started in 2021. Jules, how many years are those?
3 years.
Yes, 3 years of delays. And that's something that also should prove as almost an indictment to Kenya's justice system. Why does it take 3 years for a murder trial to start? Why does it take so long for justice to be found? All right. So when we are going deep into this story, we're going to walk, by the way, very much into this properly. We're going to talk about who Sharon was. We're going to talk about who the former Migori governor, Okoth Obado, was before all of this happened. And we're also going to try and look into what actually happened the night before, the night she died. Now, we can't fully understand what happened that night because none of us were there. The only people who can tell you were the people who've been found guilty of this crime, right? So then we'll also be looking at how the trial itself unfolded. We'll be looking especially year after year, and especially why it took 7 years.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And also, we'll be looking at what was said about Sharon online while all of this was happening, because that part of the story is still happening now. Jules, I'm sure you've seen, there's a lot of think pieces on X, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, about who Sharon was, whether or not she had it coming, which for me is a shocking, stunning thing. I don't know where we've gotten as a society where we're debating whether or not someone deserves to be murdered.
It
That's
doesn't
wild.
make any sense.
That's crazy.
And people calling her very greedy, and she deserved it just because she was a greedy woman.
I think even as we get further into this podcast, we will have to have a lot of discussions about our national values as Kenyans and what we value. What value do we put to a human life? Yeah. And are there human lives in our society that matter more than others? We'll be having that conversation. But first, let's look at who Sharon Otieno was. Now, Sharon was born in Homa Bay County, and she was the first child of Melinda Auma, a teacher, and Douglas Otieno. So her mother has testified in court that Sharon was a role model to her siblings and someone who loved school and had real ambition, which is also something that has been turned against her. Like, I don't know when being an ambitious woman became a bad thing, but here we are. So her path there was not a straight line, and I'm not going to smooth out Sharon Otieno's life. So before she met the former Migori governor, she had 2 relationships with 2 different men, right? And the first relationship was with a man named Bernard Okuta, and they had 2 children from this particular relationship. And Sharon lived with him for a period before she went to college, right? So that relationship ended, and then she was in a relationship with a man named Henry. We don't have his surname, and they had a child. So Sharon Otieno, at the time of her murder, was a pregnant 26-year-old mother of 3. I want us to remember that. Even aside from everything that has been said about that, she has left behind parents who loved her and 3 children who are going to grow up without their mom. All right? Let's not lose sight of that. So when that relationship ended, that relationship with Henry, so this is when now Sharon's mother stepped in. She was like, you're young and you're out here having kids. You need to go back to college, right? So her mother, who's named Melinda, Sharon's mom is named Melinda. She took Sharon and her grandchildren into her home, and she made the decision that she was not going to let Sharon just settle back into a house, into a life of just being a housewife. These are her words, by the way. So that times during this podcast, I'm going to quote things directly, and I'm going to do this as I'm quoting, so that you can tell the difference between what I, as Shiro, I'm saying, or what Julia is saying, and what was actually said by the parties mentioned in this narrative, right? All right. So Sharon has been told, okay, umeza, nilete wajuku, you will go back to school. So she pushed her back into education, and that is how she ended up in Rongo University. And, she, at the time all this was happening, she was a second-year medical records and information student. And she was also doing freelance journalism work on the side, right? Of course, you understand why she's doing side gigs. She got 3 kids. Jules, even you have 3 kids. Yeah. You understand, like, at the end of the day gotta end. You have to do whatever you need to do to support your kids. So here is who Sharon actually was at 26. She was a mother of 3. She was already bearing real responsibility. Her mother herself had fought to get her back into school, working towards real qualifications so she could support her children. And she was also trying to build a career in media and on social media on top of it. Like, if you go back to Sharon's social media, if you can find it, you will find a young, beautiful woman that was just trying to build her life, right? We're not going to talk about the morality of entering a relationship with a married man. That is not for me to do. Yeah? Mimi si Mungu, I am not God. My work is just to tell you the story, how it unfolded, and leave you with your thoughts, right? So, Jules, we're not going to sit here in judgment of a young girl who had children, like millions of women have done before her, and millions will continue to do long after we're gone, right? This is not something new. So, this is not... We're talking about a 26-year-old woman, not have frontal lobe was fully formed. She was not a naive undergrad with no context for what she was walking into. So this was a young woman who had already lived quite a full life. When you think about it, 3 kids is quite the life. And so then we get the woman she was when she walked into this relationship with Okoth Obado. I hope I've painted the picture vizuri. All right. Now let's look at who the governor was before all of this happened. So Zachary Okoth Obado was born in 1957 in Migori County. He trained as a teacher, studying at St. Joseph's Rapogi Secondary School before earning a bachelor's degree in education from Kenyatta University. He also later on in his life went back and did a master's in strategic management, also at Kenyatta University. So he started his working life teaching sciences at St. Joseph's Rapogi, before the TSC transferred him to Taranyanga Boys High School in Kuria. Julia, just say what you're going to say about Kuria. I need to go to Kuria County, please. What are the economic activities? Please, I want to come and see. Because there are parts of Kenya that to me, what? Anyway, let me not talk more, I'll be cancelled. Anyway, so from there, he moved out of the classroom and into public administration and business. So he served in roles connected to the Ministry of Finance and the old Constituency Development Fund structures. And in 2010, he was now appointed as the chairman of the Kenya Sugar Board for the Awendo zone, right? A position that put him in direct contact with the sugarcane farmers of South Nyanza, because we all know that this is a major economic activity that happens in Nyanza, right? True. And this position is the one that kind of laid the groundwork of his political career that began in 2013 when he ran for governor of the newly created Migori County. I don't know, let's just go quickly into Kenyan history. There was the old constitution. We didn't have counties and devolution then. We passed the old constitution in 2010. 2013 was the first election where people were vying for these newly elected posts, created posts, right? So the new Migori County, he ran as governor and he won, right? So this is the detail that will actually tell you the kind of political operator Obado was. So Migori is very deep ODM. Damu ODM territory has been for years, and Obado won the seat running on a different, lesser-known party ticket anyway. So that should tell you the kind of shrewd political operator that Okoth Obado was, winning that ticket on a different, you know, Nyanza was orange at
Baba's
that time.
bedroom.
Yes, exactly. And he won. So that should tell you the kind of person we're dealing with here, right? So again, in 2017, he defended the seat against serious opposition from his political rival, Ochilo Ayako. If you've been Kenyan and you've lived for as long as I have been, and you and Jules, I'm sure that's a familiar name.
Yeah, it is.
He ran against Ochilo Ayako and won again. 2-term. Cementing himself as one of the dominant, political forces in the South Nyanza region, right? So let's talk about how people have described him. So people who have covered him, journalists, people who've been in personal contact with him, describe him as a man of contrast, right? So on one end, he's a commanding political force who's, runs things in his county. Mm-hmm. But also he's soft-spoken. He has a very polite public manner. He was known as a formidable mobilizer, right? Someone who could turn out a crowd. Like if people knew that the governor was going to be at a rally on Sunday, they'd all turn out in full force. That's how politically powerful he was in Migori. I want us to understand that because this is very important as we move into this narrative, right? Mm. So his administration said that they would build roads, health facilities, early childhood, all these things that he said he would do, right? And then also, throughout both terms, he had been dogged by corruption allegations, right?
Oh, wow.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the EACC, accused him, his family and close associates of illegally acquiring money through fraudulent procurement deals connected to the county government. I mean, by 2017, we'd already started to see that once you put the wrong governor in charge of your county, we were seeing live. Can you remember the times when wheelbarrows were costing 6 million shillings? Hey, that first 5 years of devolution, we saw things. We saw things, yeah. Bro. So basically, the EACC were on him. His term was not clean. We're not going to sit here and say that Okoth-Obado was a clean man. He was not. Let's tell each other the truth here. All right? So there were cases that were citing different figures. There was a case that said that 73.4 million shillings to unexplained tenders and wealth. Then also people attributed his personal wealth around that time to 1.9 billion shillings that he could not explain the source of that wealth, especially because he accumulated it so quickly, right? So eventually courts froze a string of his assets. He has a house on Loresho Ridge in Nairobi. If you all know Loresho, you know that's old money, honey. All right. Then luxury vehicles, apartment blocks, commercial property. His children are also accused of holding on to proceeds of corruption on his behalf. Do you remember? Yeah, there was a lot of beef around
his children as well.
How a lot of politicians, if I enter politics and I want to be a proper Kenyan corrupt politician, I want to follow the script as it is written, right? So I will gather all this property, and because Julia is my daughter, I'll put some of my things in Julia's name.
Yeah.
So if things go south and my shit is frozen,
you're still protected.
I can access the things that I put in Julia's name because they didn't freeze Julia's assets, they froze mine. You get what I'm saying? Now do you understand why politicians move their assets around? Because they know they're up to criminality. All right. So now he was married to Helen Obado, and the two had 2 children, Jerry and Evelyn. So by the time Sharon Otieno entered his life, Obado wasn't just some obscure guy just hanging out in Migori. He was a 2-term governor with genuine bases of loyal supporters, a lot of political weight, so that when the murder charges first surfaced, some residents actually staged protests in his defense. Do you understand what I'm saying? By the time this happened, Sharon has been murdered. Then he's starting to face these accusations in the public eye, right? There's some residents of Migori that actually staged a protest for him. Although we can't really tell whether that was him or whether they were paid. We see how... You've seen also in Nairobi before Mandamano, they usually have an anti-Mandamano,
Pre-Mandamano.
Which is so stupid. Because those protests that protest against protesting, I'm even confused. Those protests that protest against protesting are usually the most peaceful. There are no goons, no shop is broken into. That should tell you. So even me, this protest that for the residents of Migori, I'm side-eyeing it a bit.
Yeah.
Because again, we know that politicians have also sponsored a few protests of their own. Right? So the reason why I'm giving you guys all this background is so that you know who Sharon was and who Governor Obado was. So that by the time these 2 people have entered each other's lives, on one hand, you know that he's not dealing with a small girl who doesn't know anything. This is a grown woman with 3 children, on one hand. And on the other hand, she's not dealing with just obscure county officials. This is a 2-term governor with a lot of political clout and weight, right?
And influence as well.
All right. Now, as you can imagine, her mother did not approve of this relationship at all, because she has had 2 relationships, 2 different guys. She's had children. The mom has said, come live with me and go back to school. Next thing you know, she's with a governor. So the mom is like, bro, so niski babes. Right? So she did not approve, and she said so directly in court during the course of the trial. And I'm going to quote her this. She says, and I quote, "I told her I don't like relationships with politicians." Even me, my own mother has told... By the way, if I wanted to send my mother directly to a hospital ward, I'd introduce her to my boyfriend, the politician. It's like I'm trying to kill her if I did such a thing. So Sharon's mother was very clear that she did not approve. Julia, you're also a mom. And you have daughters, right? You have 2 daughters.
A daughter.
You have a daughter. Yeah, you have 2 sons
Yeah.
and a daughter. Yeah, so if your daughter in her 20s came and said, this is a politician, and this is my boyfriend, and you see a politician who you see on TV every... Ungefanya nini?
Girl, I'm going to chain that little girl. Manyororo. Namfungia. What do you mean?
Listen.
Enda hata na mogoroki uko inje, but...
Not a mogoroki.
No, I'd rather bat a politician.
So, Julia, you're saying you'd rather you and your daughter walks with PIA and
What our goroke then? But I know my child is very, safe and...
Afadhali kuchizi.
Yes.
Than to associate with a Kenyan politician. Yes. You know what? Those are valid points. Those are valid points, especially given the context within we are speaking right now, right? So this relationship that Sharon's mother did not approve of, right? It began when Obado was 58 at the time, and his children were actually close to Sharon's age. So dead as he was old enough to be her dad, his own children were closer to her age, right? And now you can see why the mom didn't approve. Yeah. So this relationship continued anyway, because when have people ever listened to their parents? And again, there was not much she could do because, again, Sharon is a grown woman. It's not that she can ground her.
No.
Right. So this relationship continued. And by mid-2018, this relationship was no longer private, right? It was visible on social media. Everyone who worked for Obado knew about this. It was known within the county offices. It was an open secret. And eventually, known to his wife. Although I don't like how people say eventually, because let me tell you something. As a woman, she was probably the first to know.
Yes.
I want to tell men right now, if you're cheating on your wife and you're running a long-standing affair and your wife is not saying anything, it's because she's decided to keep the peace. She's decided to keep the peace. You guys are not as slick as you think you are. So yes, the 2018, this is no longer a secret. We can't even call it an open secret. Basically, the way this relationship was being run was that Sharon alikuwa nyumba ndogo, right?
Yeah.
She was the side piece, but a very well-known side piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in May 2018, during a devolution conference at the Acacia Hotel in Kisumu, I think I was there last week, kutamu sana, Helen Obado called her husband late at night and asked him directly whether he'd checked into a hotel with another woman. I'm not making this up. This is in court documents, right? This was in May 2018. So there's a devolution conference. I want to paint this picture for you. Of course, Obado lives in Nairobi, right? But of course, he's the governor of Migori. So he has to keep going to that side of the country to govern his constituents, right? And so there was a devolution conference. First of all, let me tell you as a journalist, if you're married to a politician and you're sure he's up to no good, go to these devolution conferences. You'll get all your answers.
Hujasema kitu.
Me, I'm just saying.
You haven't
these people,
said anything.
Because all these conferences happen like in really nice hotels across the country. They happen in Rift Valley, that beautiful place in Rift Valley. Great
Rift Valley Lodge.
That one. They have them in all of the 5-star hotels at the coast. Basically.
Yeah.
So that's like a vacation for these politicians to take the girls they run around with, right? So let me say this again. May 2018, Helen Obado calls her husband late at night directly and says, you have checked into Acacia Hotel. Who have you checked in that hotel with? Are you with another woman? And I will tell you this. By the time a woman asks that question, she already knows. She probably even has the photos. She's looking. Jules, you've been in a relationship, right?
Yes.
So by the time you're asking a man, have you done such and such?
You already have facts and evidence.
Yes. You need
for him to call. Yes.
So yes.
Unaonekana na kupima ufala.
Exactly. Tunapimana ama hatupimani. That is, I want every man who's watching this to understand. Sule, or the guy behind the camera, I want you to understand this. By the time nikuulize, ulikuwa place ABC, I already know. I probably have CCTV. I have your DNA. I have your fingerprints. I just want to see kama utanipima. I hope you understand that. Anyway, so there's a strange thread running through this whole narrative. So Obado testified that his own son, Dan, had been messaging Sharon on social media.
Hold up. Ati?
So, during the course of this trial, the former governor, testified that his son, his own son, who, remember, these children are closer to Sharon's age than the governor himself, right? So the son messaged Sharon on social media, and Sharon told Dan that she was pregnant with his sibling. So Dan reportedly even drove Sharon to Nairobi for a medical checkup at one point.
Ngoja.
I wish you guys could see, like, Julia has even stepped away from the microphone. Ask your questions. Yes, the questions.
So you're telling me
Mm-hmm.
Obado's son
Mm-hmm.
knows of this relationship,
Of course.
DMs
Yeah.
the stepmom,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the stepmom is like, yeah,
I'm pregnant
I'm pregnant.
with your brother or sister. Your sibling.
Similar age.
Age mates, pretty much. Because at this time, the governor's children also in their 20s.
No, my question is, kijana alipata nguvu ya kuchukua msichana na kumpeleka hospitalini akijua mama yake yu nyumbani.
What?
Bibi mdogo ni mimi nampeleka
Exactly. When I tell you families are different, you don't know what people are doing in their houses. Because for me, even me, like, this is wild. Like, there's no way I'd be out here managing my dad's side piece.
Yeah.
Ain't no way. But again, people are different. People's family cultures are different. People are raised differently. I want that to be very clear. This is not an indictment of the governor's children. I want that to be really clear. These kids did nothing wrong. Maybe in this, his son's mind, he's obeying his father. Right?
No, this is the only son wa Helen.
Yes.
And you know mama's voice.
Yeah.
I mean, this is...
Yeah. Anyway, let's continue. So, again, he's messaged this babe. The babe has confirmed that she's pregnant with his sibling to be. He's also gone for her in Migori and brought her to Nairobi for a medical checkup at one point. So testimony also suggested that Obado grew suspicious that there was actually mob happening between Sharon and his son.
Maya.
Then either of them admitted. So this was something that was actually said in court, that there was also this weird taboo thread running through all this idea that someone is being shared by father and son. I will say this, let's make this very clear that this was never confirmed. There is no proof that anything ever occurred between Sharon and the governor's son. Let's make that very clear. Those are just rumors. You know how people talk. So there was also this rumor mongering, and also the governor grew suspicious, right? But anyway, if you're cheating with your wife, it is something that I find so funny when men get upset that the woman that you're cheating on your wife with might also be cheating on you. Bro, I find that truly wild. Anyway.
There's something I'm looking up, Kwanza.
Yeah, let's let Julia is on her phone. Jules is on her phone because her mouth has been agape since the story began. Anyway, whatever the truth happened, Obado has been direct about the rest under oath, right? These are the facts of this case. Number one, he admitted to the affair. This is not a rumor, this is a fact. They were having an affair. The second fact, he admitted to the pregnancy. Sharon was pregnant. This was not a lie. He admitted to the pregnancy. The third fact, he admitted that he was responsible for the pregnancy. This is not a rumor, this is a fact. Now, so these are the facts so far. He had an affair. A person he had the affair with was Sharon. Sharon was pregnant, and the pregnancy was his, all right? So he testified under oath, and I'm quoting him at this time. Quoting, right? He says, by this time, it was no longer a secret. Social media was abuzz with the relationship. So in court, he said that he'd taken responsibility. He had informed his wife about the affair. He'd apologized to her. And he'd even planned to buy Sharon land and build her a house in Homa Bay, right? The one thing he's always denied, though, is his role in Sharon's murder. All right. I know you have questions. Jules, ask them. Ama niendele? Niendele? Jules is so weak. She's about to lie on the ground. All right. So now let's go look at the period around which this crime happened. So now in the weeks before Sharon died, things were already looking dodgy in this relationship. So the court had heard that she was offered 30,000 shillings, money that the governor had borrowed from his own wife, to terminate the pregnancy, and that she refused to do so. She also had received a message from an unidentified woman telling her to leave her husband alone. I want to make this very clear. This was an unidentified woman. It has never been proven that the message had come from the governor's wife. All right? Let's make this clear. So in the weeks before Sharon was murdered, she had been offered 30K to terminate the pregnancy. And this is money that the governor borrowed from his own wife, which I'm finding very shocking. Because how are you going to your wife? Babe, I need some money. For what, baby? Oh, I have a project, baby. Baby.
Idwaro pesa adi.
Idwaro pesa.
Maya.
Guy. Anyway. So apparently also in the weeks before Sharon's murder, there was a boardroom meeting where money changed hands between Obado's side and people close to Sharon, which was an apparent attempt at managing the situation quietly. This situation being her pregnancy, right? I want you to understand that the issue between Sharon and the former governor was not the affair. That was not a problem. It's the fact that she got pregnant, was posting about her pregnancy. So she's been posting pregnancy photos. So that's what made him pissed off, because it's like, mbona uchezi chini? We are married. But that still, let me make this, I'm going to make it clear throughout this entire narrative that is not an excuse for murder. All right? Just because I'm taking pregnancy photos of a pregnancy of a married man and then I turn up dead, that doesn't mean I had it coming. Was she making decisions that I personally would not have made? Decisions that her mother herself has been very clear that she was not okay with? Yes. Did Sharon deserve to be murdered because of those decisions? No. Let's make it very clear. And if you're the kind of person who thinks that being a side chick earns you murder, I urge you, please stop watching now. Yeah. Go and watch something else. Go and watch Andrew Kibe. Don't watch this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Barack Odwor, who was the journalist who would be with Sharon on the night she died, testified that Sharon had shown him recordings. She'd shown him phone conversations and WhatsApp exchanges between herself and the governor, including one where Obado allegedly pressed her to have an abortion and to stop posting pregnancy photos online. Right? So Sharon appears to have been documenting these conversations herself well before September. Maybe in some way she was aware that she might one day need proof of what was being said to her. So another thing that I want you all to understand is because she documented, Sharon in a way solved her own murder from beyond the grave. Right. Now let's talk about September the 3rd. Right? So on the night of September the 3rd, 2018, Sharon and Odwor, now the journalist, went to the Grasa Hotel in Rongo Town. Michael Oyamo, who was Obado's PA, personal assistant, had invited them there, ostensibly to sit down and resolve the concerns that Sharon had been raising about the relationship. Number one thing was that Sharon had completely refused to terminate the pregnancy. She was determined to have the baby, right? So after they left the hotel, a car was waiting a short distance away. This is not from courtroom testimony and from the investigation. I'm not pulling this out my ass, guys. This is things that are actually public record. So now several men forced Sharon and Odwor into the car. They were sandwiched between two men in the back seat, and the vehicle headed towards Homa Bay. Now, somewhere between that Homa Bay, Kisumu Road, I'm sure you know it. Yeah. Near Nyangweso Market, I'm sure you know that place again. Odwor made the decision, me, Hapa, I am not going down like this. So then this is a decision that eventually would break the case wide open, because had he not done this, to this day would not have known what happened to Sharon, right? He jumped out of that moving vehicle. He said, I'm not, because I think in him, they've been abducted. They've been forced into a vehicle. 2 people have sandwiched them. They're driving towards Homa Bay. He's a journalist. Alipiga hii hesabu akaona, this story is not going to end well for me.
Yeah.
So he jumped out of the moving vehicle, right? And of course, because they're driving at speed, so he got injured, right? But he was alive. And he made his way to a police station and reported the abduction. So of course, Sharon is still in the car. I want you guys to remember that she's 28 weeks pregnant. So it's not like she would have also jumped out after him. This is someone who's determined to have her baby. So it's not like she's going to make that decision, I'm going to jump out of a moving car. So that's to stop anyone who will start asking victim blaming questions like, Pia mbona yeye hakuruka, she's 28 weeks pregnant. All right? So now, the next afternoon, see, they've been abducted at night, the night of September 3rd. So the next afternoon at around 3:30 p.m., that was when Moses Ongili found her body near Kodera Forest. So a post-mortem carried out by the government pathologist, Dr. Johansen Odwar, documented 7 to 8 stab wounds, blunt force trauma, and evidence suggesting sexual assault before death. So she was essayed before she. This is like crazy to me. When I sit down and try and imagine the terror, the sheer terror this young woman must have experienced in her last moments, my heart breaks, not just for her, but for her children and for her mom. Right? Because her mom did her best, bro. This was crazy. So police went on to document the scene with 213 separate photos. Right? I want you guys to understand something. We really see ubeba this police, the police in Kenya. We don't rate them very highly. But I want you to understand that the DCI, when they're investigating something, they investigate. They know what they're doing. Their integrity, of course, that's another conversation. But I want you to understand that DCI is made up of very highly trained officers. I want you to get that. All right. So they took 213 separate crime scene photographs. Investigators later constructed Sharon's final hours using mobile phone data, testimony from a cab driver who said he'd ferried these people where and where, and tracked the movements of the accused in the hours before, during, and after her death. So Okoth Obado was arrested weeks later along with Oyamo and Obiero. He spent about a month in remand before the Court of Appeal released him on bond. So all 3 men were formally charged before the High Court on September 24th, 2018. This is about 20 days after Sharon's murder. And all 3, of course, denied the charges. Now let's take a look at the co-accused of Okoth Obado. So of course, because he didn't stand trial alone, so the 2 men convicted with him are not just footnotes in this story. I need you to understand the people that also aided and abetted this crime. So Michael Oyamo was Obado's personal assistant, and he was very trusted within his circle, right? He's the one who arranged the meeting at the Grasa Hotel in Rongo, and that puts Sharon and Wodwar within reach of that car that eventually grabbed and abducted him. So the prosecution, why he was also charged, they argued, and the court agreed, which is why he was convicted, that Oyamo coordinated the actual execution of the abduction. He's one that, like, the court argues and the prosecution argues that the abduction would never have taken place and would never have been successful without the contribution, the personal contribution of Michael Oyamo. Yeah. Right? So then Justice Kidhua's judgment also states plainly that Oyamo convened the meeting that delivered Sharon to her killers and found that he played a key role in carrying out the killing himself. So the court, according to the judgment of Justice Kidhua, it says that not only did he orchestrate the abduction, that there's also evidence that showed that he was one of the murderers of Sharon Otieno, which is crazy to me. Like, Nikazi, bro. Like, Sharon, you're my PA. Would you carry out a murder for me? Who are you murdering for? That's also another conversation we need to have about the kind of operation that Kenyan politicians run and the kind of circles they have around them and the kind of blind loyalty they expect. Right? Because you're a PA. You know what duties you're supposed to have as a PA. Those duties do not include murder. It's not that I can tell Julia.
Plan and orchestrate.
I'm not going to tell Julia, send these emails, pick up this package, and also kill so-and-so.
Like how?
That is on your to-do list for today. That's crazy to me. It's insane. So now let's look at the other co-accused. So Kaspal Obiero was a clerical officer within the Migori County Assembly. So, he works even for county. Which means that whether Obado was part of that, he worked for the county.
It doesn't make sense.
So, according to the court, the court found that his role happened after the killing. So he was essentially an accessory after the fact, right? So he helped to conceal what had happened. Mobile phone records placed him in frequent contact with Obado in the days immediately before the murder. Justice Githua found that his conduct that night, helping Oyamo cover his tracks, was, in her words, incompatible with a claim of innocence.
Oh.
For some, I love the way Kenyan judges write their judgments. Where? If you want to see good English, just go to the judiciary website and look for judgments. You will see English. Incompatible with innocence. If someone told me that my protestations were incompatible with innocence, I would have to fight you. We'd have to catch hands now. I'm sorry. So the Justice Githua was very clear. Obiero was not a passive bystander. He was an active participant in the chain of events that led to Sharon's death, right? Although, if someone participated in covering up after, maybe I would charge them with, accessory after the fact. Although, me not being a lawyer and not being fully conversant with the laws of Kenya, maybe someone in the comments can tell us, is there a specific crime for someone who, for instance, we committed a murder, then I came to you, my audience, and I said, help me bury this person.
It's an accessory too.
Yeah, I don't know if he would be convicted for the murder itself, maybe, unless there was proof that connected him to the events before and during the murder, maybe. I don't know. We are waiting for at this time, because what's the date today, Jules?
Today is the 29th.
Yeah, today we're filming this on the 29th of July. So the judgment, the sentencing has not happened, but the conviction has happened. So I don't know if we'll hear more when it comes to the sentencing, where they'll explain why the co-accused. I mean, we know why Oyamo was convicted. That's very clear. But I'm less clear about why Obiero was convicted of the same crime as the other two. But we will see. All right. So it's worth noting that the trial itself was interrupted by tragedy connected to Obiero, not the second co-accused. So in 2024, a scheduled hearing was postponed after the court was told that Obiero had lost his wife and children in a road accident. That's crazy. In March 2024. Right? With funeral arrangements delayed into May because, how Luo cultural rights and, these are a lot of people that died at once. So this is... The things surrounding this crazy are dark to me, right? So the other defendants do not oppose the adjournment. Yeah, so there was an adjournment that happened in March that went all the way into mid-2024 because Obiero had lost his family in a road accident. And then now there's another detail that makes this case so hard to sit with. And it's something that I think we need to really settle and sit with rather than rushing past it, right? The three men convicted are the ones who planned the killing, financed it, and covered it up. So the people that physically carried out the abduction and stabbed Sharon to death that night have never been identified.
Sorry?
Yeah. Even though, according to the investigation, Oyamo, not the PA, might have personally been involved in the murder itself, right? However, the people who carried out, the people that grabbed them, the people that sandwiched them in the car,
and took them to Homa Bay.
People that took them to Homa Bay and carried out the murder, right? These people have never been identified. So Justice Githua has said outright in her judgment that Obado, Oyamo, and Obiero acted in concert with other people not before the court. So as we sit here, the murderers walking free that may never be brought to justice. We don't know who they are. We don't know how many they are. We don't know how many people carried out the actual murder of Sharon Otieno, right? So the defense also made exactly this point during the trial while they're defending the accused, right? They argued that there was never any direct evidence identifying the actual killers and that the real perpetrators were never arrested, right? But I want us to see to this that both those things can be true at once. That the actual murderers, the people that actually carried out this crime, may not be brought to justice. However, the people that planned it and financed it are the people that have been convicted. The people that planned it, financed it, and helped to conceal it after the fact.
Yeah.
Right? All right. So that's something that I'm saying that we need to sit with. The idea of nuance. That two things can be true at the same time.
At the same time.
All right? Okay, cool. All right. So, and the thing that's scary to me is that 8 years later, there might be someone just walking peacefully around Migori, having murdered this girl. I don't get it. Now let's look at the trial and let's look at why it took 8 years to resolve, right? So Obado, Oyamo, and Obiero were formally charged on September 24th, 2018. All three denied the charges immediately. And now what followed was nearly 3 years of pre-trial legal wrangling before a single witness was introduced, right? There are many procedural questions that had to be resolved first, just a lot of legalese, including whether lawyers representing Sharon's family would be permitted to cross-examine witnesses directly. Because Sharon's family also wanted to be involved in this, search for justice, right? So the trial was scheduled to begin on December 2nd, 2020. And of course, what was happening in 2020?
COVID.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which also disrupted court sittings across the country for a long time. By mid-2021, Sharon's family lawyer, a man called Daniel Njoroge, was in court alongside the prosecution, actively opposing a further adjournment. Now, I hope you guys get a picture. There's so many adjournments, first before the pandemic, and then because of the pandemic. So by the middle of 2021, please note Sharon now has been dead for 3
years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Her family and the prosecution are saying we are not going to adjourn things any longer. If we are going to get this started, let's get this started, right? So the trial formally commences now in July 2021 after the protestations that have happened by the prosecution and the family of the deceased, right? So over the years that followed, the office of the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution, called 42 witnesses, building a case out of mobile phone records, forensic evidence, and electronic communications, including SMS and WhatsApp messages, and testimony placing the co-accused near the scene and in contact with each other in the run-up to the killing. So I want you to understand, and if you watch true crime like I do, if you're trying to plan a murder and you're there calling each other, texting each other, you will be found out that way. Even though you've decided we'll be having this conversation in person. So if me and Sharon, me and Julia have decided we're going to commit a crime, right? Me and you have come up with this plan, we're going to commit crimes. And we've decided we're trying to be smart. We're not going to, all these conversations will happen in person. But if on the day of the crime, me and my phone and you and your phone are in that region, that is enough to convict us.
Yeah.
So if you're planning to commit a crime, please don't say Shiro is helping you guys get away with crimes. No. But I'm just telling you, if you want to commit a crime, keep everything offline and don't go with your phone to commit the crime. Utashikwa.
Get a burner phone.
No, that's Julia. Si mimi nimesema. Ni Julia amesema mambo ya.
Umeniona.
Wow. This is how she gaslights me. Anyway, so 2 witnesses in particular, and they're not named by the court. They're only named PW9 and PW38. PW means prosecution witness. So PW9 and PW38 testified that one of the accused was in the company of the people who were with Sharon around the time of the abduction, right? One witness whose testimony was significant enough to make headlines on its own told the court plainly that he believed someone was after his life because of what he knew.
Oh.
So the people that were called by the prosecution to testify, they have placed the accused first in each other's company, and at that place where Sharon was taken. Because again, people don't know where exactly the murder happened.
Yeah.
But they can place all 3 of the accused at the place where Sharon was last seen. I want also us to remember that the journalist that she was with, the guy who jumped out of the car, and the reason why you even know that this girl was abducted, because had he not jumped out of the car,
then we wouldn't know. She would just have disappeared like that.
Yeah, they probably would have been murdered together. So we owe what we do know about that night to the guy that jumped out of the car. risked his life jumping out because he knew, this car ride is not going to end well for
Yeah.
me. Right? That's the only way. All right. So the case moved slowly and unevenly through 2022, 2023, 2024, with again hearings being set and moved. So now there was that postponement in 2024 because Obiero's family had passed away, right? And so during this time, the court is convening, being delayed, reconvening again. The chief government pathologist, Dr. Johansen Odwar, testified during this period as well. And he also presented the bloody clothing Sharon had been wearing and walking the court through her wounds. This is crazy to me, honestly.
I can imagine the family is also there. So
I have left some of the more graphic details out, which is shocking because even what I have told you is very graphic. But suffice it to say that Sharon's final hours were very scary, very frightening, and she died a very painful death. I want that to be very clear. So by January 2025, the court had had enough of the prosecution's case to rule that there was a prima facie case against all three men. That's how things happen in Kenya. You know, in America, how fast you have to be indicted and then now you go to trial.
Yeah.
So the prosecution presents its case and then it's up to the judge to decide whether the accused have a case to answer or whether the case will be dismissed, right? So this is now January 2025. The court is like, after the prosecution have presented the case, the court is like, we have seen enough. This something dodgy happened here, right? So notably, Justice Githua found that there wasn't sufficient evidence to place the men on their defense for the death of the child as a separate, charge. So they're just convicted of Sharon's death, and because they didn't make that a separate charge, right? And that was only because the legal standing, according to Kenyan law, because the fetus was 28 weeks old, it's not fully recognized as like a full human being. That's the only reason, right? So the defense phase now began in early 2025. So Obado said that he would call 2 witnesses in his own defense. Oyamo said he'd call 4, and Obiero said he'd call 5, although his would be unsworn for whatever reason, meaning he would make a statement without being cross-examined the way Obado and Oyamo would be. Right. So in April 2025, Obado took the stand under oath and testified for the first time about his version of events while denying any involvement in the death of Sharon Otieno. So he said he did not kill her, he did not conspire with anyone to kill her, and he did not procure anyone to kill her. That was his defense. So in their closing arguments, please, I want you to know that the prosecution called 42 witnesses. Obado only had 2 in his defense. Well, one of the co-accused didn't even want to be cross-examined. So when you think about it, they didn't have much of a defense, really. Yeah. So the defense's closing arguments, once submissions on both ends were made, they rested heavily on the point that the prosecution's case was built largely on circumstantial evidence, right, with no direct evidence of who actually carried out the murder, and that the true perpetrators had never been arrested at all. So that was what the defense was resting on. We didn't actually commit the murder. The people who actually did it, we don't know who they are, even though there is some evidence that says that the PA might actually be. Who knows? So Justice Githua now delivered her judgment on July 23rd, 2026, 7 years and 10 months after the death of Sharon Otieno. So now her ruling, it found that the case, taken cumulatively, looking at all the facts, she called it a chain so complete that there was no escape from the conclusion that the accused acted together with others not before the court to kill Sharon Otieno. Specifically, the courts found that Obado supplied the motive, the instigation, and the funds behind the murder. Then, when it comes to Oyamo, it found that Oyamo coordinated the execution of the murder, and it found that Obiero provided logistical support and helped conceal the crime afterwards. Right? So the judge was explicit that Obado's physical absence from Migori County on the day of the killing, because he was in Nairobi, did not shield him from liability. Right? Since the evidence showed that he was involved in planning and facilitating the murder, regardless of where he was physically, right? So Justice Githua also directly rejected the sincerity of Obado's stated remorse and support, She rejected that. Oh, he's felt very sorry about the
Remember,
death.
even there was a time
Yeah.
he was singing with SDA. Those, you remember that time?
I've seen that music video. It's so funny how I don't know whether, I mean, if you're watching this
Seeming so remorseful and
if you're watching this from a country outside of Africa, I don't know whether that happens in countries outside Africa, but I will say this. In Africa, what we've noticed that someone will do something completely egregious, like murder, and then be fully embraced within the church and even go on to do music videos. Have you seen the videos? You know what? I think we'll insert a clip, although we'll not play the sound because I don't want a copyright strike.
And
But
those ones kneeling in the pulpit and
Yeah.
crying.
yeah, so the justice rejected all this. Is like absolutely not, because she found that his financial offers to Sharon were never really about supporting the child, but about ending the pregnancy, including borrowing money from his wife.
And you have billions.
Girl,
30,000.
I don't get it. But also, when you're running around with small girls, your money is not as long as you think. I'm just telling you now. Things are expensive. Supporting a young girl is expensive. They need perfume, they need makeup, they need wigs.
Their hair.
Your money, they need rent, they need to go out. Your money is not as long as you think. That's why you have to end up borrowing money from your wife to procure abortions. Now you see. Anyway.
Ngumu.
Ngori.
Ngumu.
So on the stand, Obado has said this, and I quote, "I generally feel very sad she did not have to die. I feel sorrow for the children she left behind and for her parents." You see, even our lights have done this because they know it's a pack of BS.
It's BS.
Right? He says, and I'm going to repeat again, "I feel sorrow for the children she left behind and for her parents." I will say that he's right about one thing. She did not have to die.
Yeah.
So following the verdict, the court cancelled bond for all three men and they're immediately taken into custody. Right? And they've also ordered pre-sentence and victim impact reports to be filed within 21 days. So, because the judgment, the verdict happened on the 23rd or the 24th?
The 23rd.
23rd. So, within 21 days, that's when now the sentencing will have to happen. Now, let's now take a quick look at what Kenya said about this victim of murder online. And this is the part of the story that happens. And every time a woman is killed in circumstances like this, and it deserves the same level of attention as the trial itself, right? So while Sharon's killers were free on bond for years, while her case crawled through pre-trial procedures and pandemic delays, a huge amount of public energy was expended into deciding whether Sharon deserved to die or not, right? She was called a gold digger. People said she was after money. Her own mother has had to publicly respond. Like, who are we, guys? Her own mother has had to publicly respond more than once to comments claiming that she did not raise her daughter properly. I mean, surely, she's grieving her daughter and you're also dragging her motherhood through the mud. I want to tell you, there's nothing this lady did not do for her daughter. There's nothing she did not do. And then this thing that we do whenever there's a woman that is in the middle of a public scandal, where we will blame her for everything. Guys, come the fuck on. This is crazy
And
to me.
she's waited all these years.
Yeah.
And then get justice.
You know, like even back in 2018, people actually writing think pieces that had explicitly to ask whether a murdered pregnant 26-year-old deserved what was being done to her body. A question that should never have even been put to print. I'm saying that this was in national newspapers. It's crazy who we are as a society. And this did not just stay in 2018. When the verdict happened just recently, the sitting Migori governor, who was Obado's own successor, posted a public statement mourning Obado's conviction and didn't mention Sharon or her family at all. You know, these are the things that drive me insane. Kenyans online have called that out immediately and heavily, which, you know, yo, Kenyans, I love you for that. You don't allow our politicians to get away with fuckery anymore. But it's a small current window into how easily a woman's death gets reframed into something that happened to the men around her, not to her, which is crazy to me. And so Sharon's parents are still fielding all this right now in real time and not as history. I want us to understand, even as we're telling this story, Sharon was a real person with dreams, aspiration, children. She's not a character in a movie. She's a real person with people that love her, to this day. And I want us to remember that even as we're talking about her, right? Her mother has said this, and I quote, "Some people say I didn't bring up my daughter properly, while others say she wanted a lot of money." I mean, it's crazy that she has to say that. She's asked people to stop and made a point that is simple and devastating at once. Her daughter's life is gone and no verdict will ever bring her back.
She's gone.
The people that planned her murder have been convicted, but Sharon is still gone. She's now been dead for almost 8 years. 8 years that she should have been here for, right?
8 years of those children not having the love
of their mom.
of their mom.
Like, if she was alive right now, Sharon would be 34 years old.
Yeah.
That's still, by any standard, still a young woman.
Very young.
I mean, that's crazy to me. So Sharon's father, Douglas, who has been very quiet through this, has been grieving this quietly and stoically, the way African men have been instructed to be grieving, has said that he's had to decline offers of government security protection despite fearing for his family's safety, because there were tensions flaring between Homa Bay and Migori residents at the aftermath of the conviction. Can you imagine
Really?
that people are now threatening Sharon's family's life
Because
her murderers have been convicted? I don't get it. And this is a pattern that we see a lot with femicide in this country, right? And it's not unique to Kenya. We see it all across the world. In Mexico, people actually even had to come up with a song decrying femicide. It's crazy. This is not a situation that is uniquely Kenyan or even uniquely African, right? A woman is killed, and before the accused even faces trial, a parallel trial is happening in the public eye about her choices, her relationships, her decisions, as if any of that changes what was done to her. As if a woman with a complicated relationship history or financial ambitions or her own agenda becomes someone that it's more understandable to kill. It's crazy. So I'll end this by saying, Sharon made choices. Some of them, by her own family's account, were not great, right? She was 26. She was a mom of 3 in a relationship with a married man, 40 years her senior, who ran an entire county. So, of course, there's a massive power imbalance there, right? None of that required her to be perfect. But none of that required her to be sentenced to death, right? So let's talk about the verdict before we end this. So after the ruling, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions has called the conviction a major milestone in the pursuit of justice for Sharon Otieno, and has noted that the case has run 7 years and 10 months with 42 witnesses and 81 exhibits, and describing it as a reaffirmation of the DPP's commitment to prosecuting serious crimes. But this is just one conviction, right? So I think it's too early to celebrate.
Yeah.
So the Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA, has also issued its own statement, calling it a small step, this judgment, a small step towards accountability, right? They're saying it reinforces public confidence towards the judiciary. And low-key, I have to agree.
Yeah.
But did it have to take 7 years?
No.
Do you think that the judiciary would convict a sitting governor? Those are questions, right? So, again, FIDA has also made a point of noting that the toll this took on Sharon's family, specifically pursuing this case through nearly 8 years of court processes, can really test your resilience. And they were careful to add that something matters. No judgment will restore Sharon's life or the life of her unborn baby. And her baby was a boy. She was going to have a son. 2 people that should be alive right now. Her son would have been 8 years old or close to 8, 7 years old at the very least. This case matters because it tested in public whether power in this country and money can outrun justice. And this is a small first step towards showing Kenyans that maybe you're not too powerful to face the consequences of your own actions. So I want this to serve to you who's watching right now, not as a cautionary tale. We're not setting Sharon up as a villain, like, see what happens when you... No, right? We're not also trying to paint her as a saint. She's a young woman, like millions of young women, like how I was at 26. The only difference between me and Sharon is that I didn't have children and that no one killed me. That's it. I was making mistakes at 26. Yeah. You were making, right? But none of those mistakes sentenced her to death. And that is a conversation that we need to sit with as we end this podcast, right? Yeah. that we need to look at how we treat women, not just in this country, globally. And we also need to sit with how we hold power to account generally. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this case. Please sound off in the comments. If you feel that there's anything I've left out, please let me know. If there's any case that you'd love me to cover as well, I have several waiting. I'm such a true crime girly, and I'm thinking this is what we'll be doing once in a while, just doing some deep dives into cases that are just so prominent in Kenya right now. All right, thank you so much for watching, and if you've made it this far, please make sure to subscribe.